Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In, recorded on January the 22nd, 2025. I'm your host, Robert Swarthout, and I'm joined by my co-host, Andres Sandate. How's it going, Andres?
You're moving so quickly, Robert, because we have so many headlines
I'm trying to just
talk about.
shorten about 3 seconds.
Yeah. It's a rapid fire show today. We do have a lot to talk about with lots of big headlines. So yeah, let's jump into it.
I have the wrong one up here.
We obviously have a lot to talk about with respect to President Trump inauguration, a crazy storm that's passed through many parts of the South, including here in Atlanta. So hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well. I'm happy that this last storm did not affect us on the north side of town. I was not in the mood for it again. My dad was excited because he drives a school bus and he didn't have to work today because he's on the south side of town, and
that's right.
They were off.
There we go.
Anyways, so our first topic, a bit of a recap here, just kind of like with the perspective of a year of Bitcoin ETFs being out there, just how much of a success they were. I think nobody would have guessed we were at following a year. Even Bitcoin Maximalist probably would have never guessed this. So some crazy numbers here. You have Bitcoin IBIT was the most popular for inflows last year of any ETF. It's kind of outside of the inflation adjusted, and there's a couple rules around it, but at the end of the day, it was the most popular by far. The basket of all the ETFs was just pretty incredible.
It's up there with some heavyweights. When you talk about ETFs, a lot of people are familiar with QQQ. There's obviously done a lot of advertising around that particular ticker. You see it, technology focused ETF from Invesco, and then you have iShares, the MSCI EFA. So those are two household names, right? When you talk about ETFs from major money managers, BlackRock, Invesco. So for iShares to be punching at 52 billion and change in 1 year, and the second highest is Invesco QQQ, which is at 18 billion in the first year, but inflation adjusted only 34 billion. Says a lot, right? This is massive news for those who maybe questioned or speculated, would there be demand for these ETFs? There clearly is, and we have more to talk about on the ETF front later in the show.
The market has spoken. Market obviously wanted these. The SEC was forced by the courts to approve them, and now we're a year out from that, and pretty crazy. So, I think the look ahead here is, I think it's going to continue to get inflows, but how soon will the SEC approve some of their altcoin ETFs? Ethereum's already out there. It really hasn't done great, whether it's the asset or Ethereum for that matter, over the last 6 months. But it's been it will be a interesting time with this new SEC coming in.
Yeah, and the only other comment I would say about this first one is it's not just the two bigger issuers, in this case, BlackRock and Fidelity with their Bitcoin ETFs that made the top 20. It's also, the ARK 21 has an ETF that's close to 3 or 4 billion, a little over 4 billion of inflows that's attracted, and then Bitwise, its Bitcoin ETF, has attracted close to 2.3 billion, I think, to be exact. So you have ETFs that have, by all calculations, been successful launches in the first year, which is not the case. Many ETFs just go away in a year; they just don't get traction.
Right. Yeah. And, admittedly, there's a long tail of these ETFs for Bitcoin. I imagine some of them probably, I wouldn't probably get that business gets sold off, or however the consolidation will happen, because it probably doesn't make sense to have 9 of these things sitting out there.
Right.
But what I find fascinating about this next topic, so JP Morgan was not JP Morgan the guy, but I think it was an analyst or somebody from JP Morgan saying that if the SEC were to approve an XRP and a Solana ETF, that collectively they would have up to 14 billion in inflows. Just amazing how 1 year of perspective can be changed so much, because if we rewind a year ago, the expectation for the Bitcoin ETFs was to get to 5 or 10 billion, and we're talking about altcoin ETFs potentially doing more than that in their first year. So it's been a fun time to be in crypto since the election, and I think the first half or even this whole year will be pretty interesting.
Well, yeah, and you have to also look at the signaling, right? I mean, a major bank analyst would not have put that type of note out 2 years ago, right?
Oh no,
Not
they
only
would have lost
because there
their
was
job.
no, not yeah, not
You know,
only because there was no ETF
right.
approved and trading, but yeah, that would have been, I mean, just politically, right?
Mhm.
That would have been a non-starter. So I think it's the beginning of what I would expect we'll see a lot of from financial institutions, analysts that are covering the space, because asset management, moves the needle, right, for a lot of these issuers in terms of new products and inflows and capital flows. So, yeah,
Yep.
pretty impressive. How much the environment's changed for crypto in a short amount of time.
Right. I mean, just went from being heavy or strong headwinds to pretty stiff tailwinds
Yeah.
around November the 5th or 6th. So I guess rounding out our topics here when it comes to ETFs, I found it pretty entertaining. Friday evening of this last week, or Friday afternoon, that was Gensler's last time working at the SEC, and because he had resigned at that point, and the amount of ETF filings around crypto that came in after he technically was no longer employed there was kind of comical. You can tell these things were teed up. There's some examples are like a Litecoin ETF, a XRP leverage, or an inverse ETF on XRP, a futures ETF, a Solana futures ETF, and a couple others that are around debt strategy when it comes to digital assets. So pretty fascinating, and I can't imagine this is the last we see. And the SEC, in my opinion, really obviously needs to hurry up and get the framework in place, because if not, they're going to have to weed through all these different things of different assets that are very cloudy in nature about their place. So
Yeah, it's going to be tough for they being the SEC, folks that are there to review these filings and determine next steps, right? So it's a multi-step process to get one of these products to market without a broader framework. I think we're going to talk about that later in the show, but yeah, it's the last 3 to 4 days has been just, there's a remarkable amount across all agencies and just about every industry, just a remarkable amount of rapid change that's happening, and or just the impact of, like, say, executive actions or executive orders and how to process it. So I think we're going to be in this state of, hurry up and let's see what happens from our perspective, like analyzing
right.
the news for foreseeable future. I just hope that we get some folks in place and we can start seeing the results of
Real
some of
work.
this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the real work.
I was actually reading right before we came on an analogy that I actually think is quite fitting. It's easy to be excited about everything right now, and certainly it's Trump's first 100 days, very early part of that, obviously.
Yeah.
But we're also coming out of, at least the analogy was, a really bad divorce, and now you're in this honeymoon phase of the new presidency. So everything seems exciting. Obviously, there's all these new headlines coming out. They've been teed up. It's not like they did all this work immediately and then talked about it. So they've been working on it. And over time, I would imagine the news cycle slows down a little bit around a lot of this stuff, and they actually have to actually go do the work to actually get it done. So anyways, so next topic is about Tether. So USDT, the stable coin. They are currently based in the Caymans, and they are moving their headquarters to El Salvador. We talked about El Salvador in our last episode 2 weeks ago because they got a loan from the World Bank, and they had to drop Bitcoin from being part of their treasury and then investments they were doing in it, and make it only to be private citizens could be doing it. So I just found this interesting. Like, you have it flipped, and then all of a sudden now they're welcoming it. And I'm not quite sure what this does for Tether's reputation of being in a lawless jurisdiction of sorts when it comes to finance, or less laws. So I don't know. Maybe this is the end of the story for them, or maybe a different chapter that we don't understand. So,
Well, I think a lot of people are hoping for 25. I'm at least crypto optimists or people pro crypto are looking for stablecoin legislation in 25.
Mhm. Yeah,
So yeah, I think there's more to the story, but it's just we're in that mode where we're just gonna have to see what plays out in 25.
absolutely. So moving on, our next topic, and we probably won't spend much time on this. If you would have asked me this a month and a half ago, it was me, I guess, 2 months ago, it was important. And
Yeah.
it has to do with the SEC Ripple case, and the SEC finally submitted their brief explaining what they will be appealing. This got very little chatter on Twitter after it was actually submitted. People were wondering if it was going to happen at all. It did happen, and at the end of the day, I mean, the attorneys are basically saying they even had hard times going through this. Or the attorneys on Twitter, to be clear, because they don't think it's ever going to be litigated at this point. They think it's going to be withdrawn or settled.
Yeah.
So
I think there's so much change happening at the SEC. I agree with you, Robert. I think this one ends up going away. When new leadership is in place, I think it's just was more or less feels like a formality.
yeah, and the last thing I'll say on this is the SEC is doing their first meeting tomorrow. One of the topics in the closed door meeting apparently will be discussing cases that could be in settlement or litigation. I don't know if it happens tomorrow per se, or they're going to wait for the new chair Atkins to get in place. I hope they do it tomorrow. I don't think it's terribly realistic, but it's because they do have three commissioners still in place. Two of them are Republicans, Hester Peirce and Ueda. And Ueda is the acting chair, so they could do a vote to be probably a 2-1 vote, and they could move and clean up a lot of this non-fraud cases. Is I think the way they would approach it. So
yeah.
Next topic is so there's been a lot of talk since July, more so towards the tail end of the presidential race, around setting up a Bitcoin strategic reserve for the U.S. The Bitcoiners think that they're the only ones that are going to get it. There has been some discussion, and there seems to be a rumor. The question is how likely of a chance it is, but it would be more than just Bitcoin. It would be US-based cryptos, including Bitcoin. So that would not be Ethereum, but it would be Bitcoin. It could be XRP. It could be ADA. It could be, I believe, HBAR, in Solana, like a basket of maybe 5 or 6 of these. Again, we'll have to see how it goes. But at the end of the day, I even put the whole chances of any sort of reserve at 50-50 personally. I'm just not convinced that it's going to get across the finish line right now. There's enough news out there to make me at least pay attention to it, but it's I think there's more things likely, like legislation is going to happen. I'm not sure that the reserve does. So,
do you agree? Do you agree that at the state level that it's less likely as well?
I think that's a great test area for them if it's going to happen anywhere first. And I think there's like 5 or 6 states that have a bill in some form that are trying to go through. I don't know if it's the states are doing it because they're trying to front run the U.S., the Fed doing it. Not, again, then it could turn into a race amongst other countries. I don't know. Again, I'm not sure what kind of signal that sends if the U.S. does it, because everyone they keep saying the dollar's fine, Bitcoin's not a competitor to the dollar, but all of a sudden you have a reserve of it. Like, how do you reconcile those things in your mind?
Well, yeah, and I read some analysis that the further you go to the centralization of crypto, in terms of it's in the hands of these state actors or centralized entities like state governments, state treasuries, federal governments, federal treasuries, it takes away from that whole crypto argument at the beginning, which was to decentralize finance, decentralize, the sort of consolidation of power in the hands of large banks or large, financial entities or large governments. So, yeah, there's a lot that, if we end up seeing this, which there's no certainty that it'll happen, it does lead to some sort of fundamental questions around this.
And I keep coming back to why did the Bitcoin maxis want there to be a reserve so bad? And I think it's purely they just know that their bags if in crypto terms, are just going to go up in value. Like, it's not that they're trying to make the dollar a stronger thing. I think it's purely that they just want their number to go higher. So, anyways, we will move on. So the next topic is still about Bitcoin, and it's around the idea with Coinbase. They started offering the ability to get a loan backed by Bitcoin that you hold. You would put it into their service. It actually gets shipped off to another service provider behind the scenes. They've talked about this, and you would get USDC stablecoin. And you've been able to do this outside the U.S. for quite a while. The regulators and the environment in the U.S. kind of wasn't allowing it to happen. And I think, not that there's regulations in place for this thing yet. I just think now that you have an SEC that's not going to be an adversary when it comes to innovation like this. So,
any idea what the minimum size is on these loans?
I do not. I think there's actually a maximum. I think, well, there's a maximum LTV, right? So I think it's 38%.
Okay.
Or something like that.
So you own $100,000 in Bitcoin. Theoretically, you go to Coinbase, you say, I want to borrow, $30,000. You're below that LTV. It's 30%. In this case, you give them your Bitcoin, goes off to a third party for safekeeping. They give you $30,000 loan.
And also the rates will vary depending on what the LTV is.
Right.
It looks like, from what I'm reading here, the rates are from 9 to 20%. So it's, in some sense, the lower end is not that much different than what you may get in a mortgage, but the high end starts to feel like a loan shark or a payday loan. So,
well, it's not the first time that an investor, or in this case, like somebody that owns assets, like take real estate. I mean, there's a lot of real estate investors who can't borrow money from banks, and they have to go to bridge lenders, or they have to go to short-term financing, and they're not paying 7, 8, 9% at the bank anymore. They're now paying 13, 14, 15%. And people do that all day long because, they're asset rich and cash poor, and they don't want to lose a project, or they need to finish a project, so they need cash. And so, 16, 18, 20% feels super rich, but Coinbase isn't a fool. So they're going to make money, putting the capital out.
Yeah. And I think in this sense, these obviously are loans, but like in the traditional sense, you don't typically have the collateral potentially having a 50% drawdown, right? I mean, like, so the LTV on these things it's
going to be low.
Interesting. I mean, if Bitcoin was to go down to 50,000, there's a chance that a lot of these loans are borderline, like they may call them, right? I don't know the exact terms. There's no set end date on these loans from everything that I could tell. So more of a credit line than anything else. So,
I mean,
I would imagine we start seeing a lot of this kind of
financial engineering. Yeah. I was going to say, I think you're going to see more of this where you can, margin your assets.
Absolutely. Now we're going to delve off into the world of meme coins. I did not think this was going to be a topic that we would ever talk about. Blew my mind. So there was as part of the whole inaugural weekend leading up to the inauguration on Monday, there was a crypto ball that took place Friday evening in DC. Paul Atkins was there. Bissett, I think is how you say his last name, the new Treasury nominee, and many other people, especially a lot of people in crypto. During the event, the Trump meme coin was launched. I have not seen any denial from the Trump team that it wasn't him. So at this point, we're assuming it's him. He actually had a chance yesterday at a press conference to say that, and he didn't. He said, "Oh, I don't know much about it. How's it doing?" But it shot up at one point. It had a market cap, I think, of like $60 to $70 billion.
That's in the daily briefing, Robert. Let's be honest. Come on.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's not be naive here.
Wink, wink.
It's doing very well. So he launched the Trump coin during this effectively a rally of sorts, right, in DC.
Correct.
And it's taken off like big time.
It is now that it has the 29th ranked market cap of all of crypto, and that's right at 7.7 billion. Or just me, is it market cap? Yeah, 7.7 billion. So it's come way down. Partially because the other half we're going to talk about is the Melania meme coin. So I think late Saturday, early Sunday, hers was launched.
Yep.
And a lot of the liquidity just kind of swept out of Trump's. Within 30 minutes of hers launching, his was down 50%. I've heard some crazy numbers on this where you can see on-chain analysis was done, and somebody took $1 million of stablecoin USDC and bought into Trump admittedly early on, and it turned into $150 million. The challenge with these is, yes, the number goes up, it becomes very big. It's all about the liquidity. I don't think that you probably could have got $150 million out of it without crashing the price.
Right.
But
that's the other side of the trade. It's theoretical.
Absolutely. So both of these combined, why are they doing this? Well, it's a chance to make money. I get it. You're not going to have an SEC that's going to come after them. I get it. But the running theory that I probably subscribe to is they had to do this now if they're ever going to do it. And because once he was in office, is part of the Constitution, you cannot use the presidency as a way to make money for yourself. Which makes a ton of sense here. He was not in that period yet until Monday at noon. So they could get it out the door before that. And I don't know. You had asked me yesterday what I thought about this, and I'll say it on the podcast. The same thing. It's like, I think it's a bad look for crypto, but I think it's a great sign for how the Trump presidency is going to deal with crypto. So I mean, clearly, two answers there.
Yeah, you have a pro crypto move here. But I don't know how many people are ultimately that surprised, right? Like, we saw a lot of signaling over the last couple of years with, some of the other headlines, like, in fact, the next one, World Liberty Financial, we saw a lot of the signaling around this. And, say what you will about, now President Trump, like, he's a master promoter, master, influencer when it comes to the media. And this plays right into the meme coin mania, right, that we've seen play out in crypto. The some of the things that I guess we'll have to see play out with these two coins is, and I asked you this before we started, like, who are the buyers? What's the profile of that buyer? And I think you said it's it may not be who people think on the surface, like for the non-financial market player. It's not necessarily the guys and gals who are at the rallies. Because it's complicated to actually buy the tokens or the coins.
I mean, they weren't traded on Coinbase or any centralized exchange. They were on the Solana network. So you had to have funds on Solana, or you get them there, and then you had to go to a decentralized exchange and kind of do your trading that way. So it was the true degen crypto gamblers. So if there was, I mean, I could probably know this number if I had done it in advance, but there could only have been 10,000 people that touched this. But it made far bigger news than 10,000 people would normally make.
Well, I think the bigger question and existential question is like what you said earlier, which is, folks that have been building in crypto and focused on things like commercial utility and focused on, the broader impact of the technology on enterprise, et cetera. Like, when you see these types of moves, it does make a lot more skeptics, right, say, see, this is ultimately what this is about. Like, crypto's just about a quick buck, or it's about meme coins, or it's about celebrity. Who's holding the bag at the end of all of this is their skeptical sort of question. So I think it raises some of those things that the industry will have to wrestle with over the next few years.
Yep. But my hope is the meme coins from the Trumps are behind us, because there's a lot of other Trumps that can end up with meme coins here. The rumor was Barron was next, but I hope not. So anyways, you kind of alluded to a little bit there, but so our next topic around World Liberty Financial. So that is the crypto company that I believe Eric and Don Jr. have started up. They have huge ambitions. We'll see what they kind of get to, but they obviously can pump money into this. And over the last, over the weekend and early this week, they have purchased, again, this is all done with on-chain analysis, because we know the wallet addresses of their Ethereum wallet from the NFT sales they did a couple of years ago. But they've spent roughly about $100 million buying a couple of different tokens, Ethereum, Bitcoin that was wrapped on the Ethereum network, but you can think of it as Bitcoin, and Aave, Link, TRX, and ENA. It's that number is probably closer to 110 million. But it's, the theory that I was reading about that I probably believe is they when the buying stops from this wallet, that's when the regulations are coming. Because they, in theory, they need to get in place first. The true, I guess, traditional finance way of approaching this, but we just get to kind of see it happen because it's on chain. So, and these are the wallet addresses we know about. There may be other wallet addresses they don't talk about. So
yeah, have we seen what have been the moves of the prices of these altcoins since those purchases were made public? Anything material?
Nothing material. I mean, the last 3 or 4 of them are small enough coins that I don't pay attention. But Ethereum and Bitcoin have not done anything crazy the last week. For that matter, and Ethereum hasn't done much for the last 6 months. If you really want to think about it that way, so it hasn't had an influence yet. Ethereum's been lagging this run that we've had since the election. So,
well, a lot of people speculated that and Trump said, and he says it in the Trump meme coin, I guess you'd call it prospectus. It's really a website that explains what the meme coins are. At least at his, he has called himself the crypto president, and even though he didn't make crypto or any sort of proclamations, or didn't even use the word crypto in his inaugural address, a lot of people do hold out hope that are pro crypto that we're going to see a lot of regulation. We're going to see a lot of new laws passed around the industry. So these two headlines would be signals that is the case.
Yeah. And I certainly have not changed my opinion. We are going to get crypto regulation. What does it happen in the first 100 days? Fingers crossed, but it wouldn't surprise me if it takes longer than that. So
yeah,
I have been disappointed in the past in these topics, and I hope to no longer be disappointed. So moving on, our third to last topic here is the Bank of America CEO Moynihan was in an interview, and they asked him about crypto, and his response was, the financial industry is ready to adopt crypto payments if regulators give us the green light. That is the most direct answer that I have heard from any sort of bank CEO that is positive about crypto.
Yeah.
And admittedly, kind of sent off some spidey tinglies for me from some research I've done years ago, where Bank of America has a lot of XRP patents. So who knows what happens there? But it was, I did a double take when I read that. I'm like, wait, I need to reread that again. Make sure I read that right.
Yeah. Well, he's one of many, I think, financial institution CEOs, I think, over the last month or two that have really had to sort of gear up, like, what are going to be the talking points? Because I think they're going to keep getting these questions, when they go and do interviews. I think that again, we said this earlier, like, there would have been a different answer 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago.
He would have been like, no comment. Like, there would be nothing. Yeah. It's, even if we only get stablecoin regulation out of the gate, that is just going to turn up the noise on this. And it's going to be harder and harder for them not to at least answer some of the questions that they get. So I look forward to it. It should be good theater nonetheless. So,
yeah.
Our second to last topic here is yesterday, the SEC announced that they are putting together a crypto task force led by Commissioner Peirce, who has been very pro-crypto. I mean, heck, her nickname is Crypto Mom, and about establishing a clear regulatory framework. Like, this is what we've been asking for. This is what she's been asking for. And we were talking before we started about, like, what may be a timeline for this. I think there's a chance that she's got more of this written than people may realize. Not to say that it's going to immediately be signed and released by the SEC tomorrow, but if we don't hear anything about this for 2 months, I would be shocked. At least the beginning stages of it, because she has had this. She tried to push it on Gensler when he came in. Obviously, that didn't happen, and we are. It feels like we're getting close. Put it that way. So
yeah. I mean, it's like you said to me. I mean, there's probably a playbook. Grab it off the shelf. The regime has changed. It's no longer about it's going to change, or it could change, or we need to change. It's changed. So there's a different sheriff in town, as they say, and I think we will see a lot more activity on the regulatory front, to say the least. And it starts with these are agencies, right? They can't just stroke a pen It's not an executive action, right? As much as some people would like that, there's going to have to be a process, but it at least appears, like you said, that there's a playbook, and maybe they're not starting from the, the 1 yard line. Maybe they're already at the 50.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed that we talk about this soon.
Yeah.
And so our last topic, I didn't have this on my bingo card for today's episode. I was thinking this was going to take a couple months, but one of the campaign promises that Trump made when he was at the Bitcoin conference last July was that he would pardon Ross Ulbricht. So for those that don't know, Ross admittedly did commit a crime. He was the guy that ran the Silk Road website back in the day where you could, among many other things, buy drugs online and you're paying with it in crypto. He basically built an eBay for illicit
illicit activity. Yeah.
And he
guns,
got busted.
drugs, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. There's a movie out there about him. I forget the title of it. If
really? Okay.
You probably look it up and kind of see it. But at the end of the day, he got sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years, which seems a little aggressive for someone that did. It was a non-violent crime. And anyways, so Trump ended up pardoning him. He's already out of jail as of late last night. And, the Bitcoin community in particular, but crypto as a whole, I think was happy to see Trump follow through on his first crypto promise, or one of his. This would be the first one he's followed through on. So we can move on. So the U.S. government still holds all the Bitcoin that they seized from him. It's like 190,000 Bitcoin, worth like $18 billion at this point. He will not be getting that back. There's some law, I forget the name of it, I was reading about that. If you committed a crime and then you don't later get your things back that you committed a crime with, even if they're not illegal. So Bitcoin's not illegal, but he's not getting his Bitcoin back. So
yeah. I think that's where you would have seen a lot of people draw a line, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about this. There's been so many pardons over the last 2 days where, I have to honestly just suspend comment a lot of times and just process, because we saw Biden pardon a lot of people on his way out. We saw Trump pardon a lot of people on his way in. For those of us that are law-abiding citizens, or at least law-abiding by what the laws were at that time, it does kind of make you scratch your head. I mean, that's just as an American. So, I'm not going to comment on it other than the fact that, there was definitely a lot of people wanting this guy released. I wasn't paying attention to crypto back at the time, when the crypto bazaar or Silk Road was happening. Yeah. So I'd have to do more research, but the guy's out of prison.
Yep. Anyways, well, that's a wrap on this show. So thanks for joining us on this episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In. To stay updated on future episodes, you can find us in any podcast player by searching Teton Crypto Capital or the Weekly Crypto Check-In. Take care.
The information presented in this podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, trading, or any other advice. The content provided is general in nature and not tailored to any individual's specific circumstances. Always conduct your own due diligence and consult with a professional financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Cryptocurrency trading involves significant risks, including, but not limited to, the potential for loss of all or a portion of your investment, market volatility, and regulatory uncertainty. The hosts, guests, and producers of this podcast are not responsible for any decisions or actions taken based on the information discussed herein. Cryptocurrency is not legal tender in many jurisdictions and is subject to market risks. Past performance does not guarantee future results. This podcast does not endorse or guarantee any investment outcomes or results. Use of this podcast implies your acceptance of this disclaimer.